Starting. All right, it looks like we are live. Hey out there, I'm Chip, and you are joining me today for a live chat about the power of sharing your story authentically to help your business. Hey out there, and I'm totally hearing myself. You are joining me today for. How am I hearing myself like that?
You're hearing yourself through your speakers too. It's on your end. Can you hear it now? I think you fixed it. Nope.
Well, but I muted myself. That's really bizarre. Is it still happening? No, but I hear you, so that's good.
I wonder if it's somebody else.
No, I hear it now. That's really annoying. Danny, is that you? Is it still happening? No. Well, we're going to pretend to ignore it. Can you hear me twice, Christine, or is it just one?
I can hear you twice, so maybe we need to mute our assistant.
Maybe we need to what? Unmute?
Mute our assistant.
I think he is muted. Well, we're going to pretend to ignore it. Can you hear me twice, Christine? Or is it just one?
I can hear you twice. So
I'm hearing our whole conversation over again.
I am too.
My word, that's annoying. Maybe we need to what? Unmute? Let's see. This is bizarre. It's never done this before.
And it literally just started when we went live. It wasn't happening in our pre-show banter.
There's a part of me that wants to blame the app you're using. My word, that's annoying. Sorry, guys. Technical difficulties here. This is bizarre. It's never done this before.
It literally just started when we went live. It wasn't happening in our pre-show banter.
Let's see here. How about now? Have we solved the issue now, or are we still doubling up?
So far, it seems single.
Okay, I think our technical support, Daniel James Bay, fixed it for us. So what a stud, what a stud. Hopefully nobody's logged in until right now. At 3:03, hey guys. Welcome to our chat. My name is Chip. I'm with Stomp Software, and today we're going to be talking about the power of sharing your story and how important it is to cultivate and share your authentic story for the sake of your business, your photography, just in life. I am joined today by an incredible photographer, a fantastic business coach, a published best-selling author, and better than all that, my friend, Christine Tremoulet. She is here in Houston, where I live. And Christine, would you say hey and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. So as Chip mentioned, I'm Christine Tremoulet. I live in Houston, Texas, in a 97-year-old house that's currently being remodeled.
Christine, if I were to guess, I would say that maybe that wall behind you is part of your renovation. Is that right?
It is.
Awesome.
We are in the shower.
That's fantastic. We're going to come back to that in just a minute. Before we do, I wonder if it's okay, I'd like to give just a bit of a history, my memories of Christine, kind of our origin story. Is that cool?
That's great.
Awesome. So, golly, a little over 10 years ago, I attended my very first WPPI, big photo convention in Las Vegas. And it was kind of, I was that like, I had that wide-eyed country kid, first time in the big city kind of experience going on. I had only been shooting about a year and a half. And,
you live in Houston.
Well, I know. It's the starstruck elements, right? It's the everybody that I've been following for 18 months. I'm bumping into in the hallways and stuff. And somebody, I don't even know who, it might have been you, organized a Houston photographers meetup at this little cafe right in the middle of the casino at the Paris Hotel and Casino. And what I remember distinctly about it, and you can correct me if my memories aren't serving me, but there were 12, 15, 20 people kind of all gathered around this group of tables. And my memory tells me that like 17 of those people were like sitting there quietly, like looking around, like sizing each other up and like, I don't know, do I speak first? Does she speak first? And then there's Christine, who I don't know that you've ever met a stranger. And you were just this amazing source of like energy and friendliness and like endless questions, but not questions like you weren't like fishing. It was just questions like, hey, I'm genuinely interested in you. What are you up to? What are you about? And it was at first I had that whole like deer in the headlights, like, oh my God, what's happening? Someone's talking to me. But your demeanor, your personality was so disarming, and your approach and just your whole personality was so genuine that I was like, okay, this is I can be okay with this, and we just chatted for a while, and it, as conversations do, we kind of bounced around a little bit, but I since that day, I have known you to not be any different than that. You still are a source of energy and fun, and yeah, I learn something every time we talk, and I'm excited about the potential of that today. So that's kind of my memory of Christine. So yeah, I want to go back, if it's all right. Kind of go off script a little bit. Will you talk a little bit more about your house? You said a 97-year-old house that you're renovating.
Right. So moved to Houston when I was a teenager, and I always wanted to live in the Heights, which is really centrally located, older bungalow style houses. And 6 years ago, we bought this house, and at the time it needed a little work, but we were in the middle of buying the house and moving and everything else. So we didn't do any of the work that it needed. So in preparation for, in case we have to sell, my husband is currently job hunting. And I was like, okay, well, that's, we have to get ready in case we have to sell. But as we've gotten into it, now I don't want to move. So we're in the Heights. We're in an adorable little bungalow. I love our house. But the shower used to be a horrible jacuzzi tub that I called a death trap. And so as of today, it was freshly retiled. We're about to go into painting, so everything is like packed up all over our house. And as I was prepping this morning, I realized there was, no good place in the house for me to sit and have a background that didn't look like, I mean, it kind of looked like hoarders everywhere because there's boxes everywhere. And I didn't want to be broadcasting that live. So
amazing! I'm thrilled that you shared your tile project with us. So
we're in the shower.
That's a first. That's definitely the first time I've been in a shower with no. Well, so we did about 2 years ago. We did a bit of a renovation project on our house, and it was 99 years old. Wait, no, sorry, built in 99. A little bit different.
Right, right.
But our joke is that it was built in 99 and decorated in 87. It was rough wallpaper and linoleum tile, and so it was a fun process to make those selections and kind of see our vision come together. Do you have a favorite space? Something you're most excited about?
Oh, I am currently most excited about the shower. And if you go back on my Instagram account and look, you can see the like random wallpaper we found while renovating the shower. So behind the wall that's up there was this like cardinal wallpaper, probably from the 40s or 50s.
Oh, how cool is that?
And so there's photos of that on Instagram. And then there was like old cowboys and wagons. Yeah, it's been really, we haven't found too many discoveries because about 10 years ago, some of these rooms were more recently built. So there haven't been a ton of discoveries like that, but there have been a few, like pink linoleum tile on the wall in the kitchen.
Oh, that's amazing.
It looked like fake terracotta bricks, but it was linoleum, and it was just a like really little section of it, but that was underneath the tile in the kitchen. So I'm currently most excited about the shower. There's eventually going to be a black stripe actually right above where my head is. And we're just waiting for the black tile to come in. So if that black tile had been here today, we wouldn't be in the shower because Tino, the tile guy, would be here tiling right now.
You're in his place right now.
I'm in his space.
I feel fortunate that was delayed. So that's very cool. And
to jump back on you, it's really it's interesting to hear your version of when we first met, because you came with a whole group of people. And, knowing you this long, I consider you kind of like an observer anyways, but you came with like a whole posse of people when you came. So like, it wasn't just you all alone.
That's
In fact, I
funny.
believe like your wife was there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
There was a group of, and that was I probably wasn't walking at the front of that group. I take your point. I'm definitely kind of in new social settings. I'm not so much an introvert, but in settings like that, I'm like, I'm gonna hang back a bit and
Yeah, you're
just
an
see what's up.
observer. You're an observer, but and I love how you describe me though, because that really is, back to what we're talking about today, that I love to share what I know. I mean, that's
Sure.
sort of my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, that's evident.
And bio-wise, prior to being a photographer, I worked in the web industry for several years. So working with Fortune 500 companies. And so that was the year, and I owned a hosting company. So leading up to becoming a professional photographer, I came from the web side of things.
Gotcha. Okay.
Which goes into our other conversation.
Well, let's jump in on some story stuff, and then I'm gonna circle back around to that if that's okay. So one of the ways that you've inspired me the entire time I've known you, both in my photography business, in my personal life, was kind of actually what you just mentioned, kind of with the challenge to put myself out there more. I'm not an overly shy person, but I'm also not the one to be right out the front like, hey, everybody, here I am. So, being on a webcam with, people watching me online right now, not my favorite thing to do. No, it's fun. But I guess I've kind of thought, well, if I talk about what I think I'm good at, then it's going to come across as boastful or braggy or like I'm full of my own steam or whatever. And so my default is kind of to shy away with an attitude of like, well, if people want to know what I'm capable of, then they'll ask me, which I've found is a fantastic way to lose out on much lucrative business. So let's start with the philosophical, cultivating a story, sharing a story. Why is it important to have a firm grasp on your story, on who you are and what you do?
What a lot of us tend to do is we have a story inside of us. We have something drove us to be passionate about what we're doing. I don't have a lot of problem. Would you say blowing my own steam, tooting my own horn is not a big problem for me. So for several years, I focused on doing boudoir photography for moms. And part of that was because I'm super passionate about helping other people see the good things about themselves and see what other people see in them. And that's actually driven from not so positive experiences that happened in my past, that I dated a narcissist for 8 years who proposed 5 years in, but could never be bothered to actually set a wedding date, which left me with a lot of insecurities. You really start to question yourself and why am I not good enough and everything else. And the magic black box in my hand, the camera, was a tool to help me talk to other women about this. Like, tell me what the negative things are in your life that are holding you back, and let's see if we can maybe change that story. So I have the story, and if I don't put it out there, I leave clients unsure what to say about me. They don't know what to tell their friends about me. And what we end up with is, oh, you should call Christine and work with her. She's great. Well, okay. But now if they have 7 other people who it's like, oh, you should call this photographer, they're great. How does that person choose? And I talked about this on Instagram yesterday, or earlier today, actually. If I put out there my stories and what makes me unique, it helps to give people that, they're trying to choose among 10 great photographers. They're in almost any market, there's multiple photographers for them to choose from. And all the pictures are going to be good. You can't market solely on your photos because clients can't tell the difference between good and great.
Sure.
They can't. And so in the end, they start trying to look for personal connections. I'll never forget the day, Chip, you actually told me over lunch a couple years ago, and I don't know if you'll even remember this, how I showed up in the Houston market just kind of out of nowhere. And like, boom, here I am. I was fully booked my first season and shot 25 plus weddings, made 6 figures my first season, or my first full year. And the biggest part of that was because I was saying, hey, I'm Christine, this is what I'm about, you know, pick me. And people would show up to meet with me and I'd start talking and they go, oh my God, you sound in person, you sound just like you do on your website. So they had already fallen in love with me. If I got them to the point of having a meeting with me, they booked. And that was, you know, having a blog, because I've blogged for 17 years now. So having a blog that they could read and get to know me was so helpful to them in making that choice. As photographers, we commoditize ourselves. Like, what we do to clients is, here's a bunch of pretty photos. I'm a great photographer. I'm a professional. You should hire me. Of course you're professional, and I certainly hope you're great, because you shouldn't be charging money otherwise. So, like, it's assumed that you're good. We're not going to say great. It's assumed that you're good because you're charging money, and it's assumed that you're professional because you're charging money. So we all get furious when we get those emails from clients that say, hi, I'm interested. Here's my date that I want, whatever I want. What's your prices? And we get so mad about it. We're like, why do they just care about my prices? Because that's all we're telling them to care about.
When we're not setting ourselves apart by getting out there who we are, the only thing they have to compare from the 10 great photographers is, well, this one's at this much, this one's at 80% this much, this one's at 120% this much.
Right. This one must be the best because they're the most expensive. Sure. Or this one must be, this one's the lowest price, and they all look pretty good to me. So
it's almost like we force people. It's almost like we force people to choose on price because we're not doing enough to set ourselves apart from the pack. And
then we get mad that they're choosing on price, but we're not doing anything about it.
So is this, when you first started in photography, you said you had the background in writing and telling your story through your blog, but was it a natural thing for you to transition that to your photography work, or is it something that you had to like build practices and set kind of routines and make yourself do?
For me, it like the writing part itself for me, I will admit, was pretty natural because I had already been blogging for 7 years when I started my photography business. The eye opener was realizing 2 or 3 months in that people were, they would find my business site, but then they would go find my personal blog and they would devour my personal blog, which wasn't attached to my business site. I maybe had a link to it here or there, but they weren't attached. And they would devour it. And they would come in and they'd be like, oh, I read that you read this book last week, and you know, whatever randomness that had nothing to do with photography. And I'm like, okay, why do you care about that? And you know, it took me a few months to go, oh, they care about that because that's what makes me different than everyone else. However, you do need to set up systems and have a plan in place, because when you get in the thick of everything else, for everyone I know, myself included, blogging tends to fall to the bottom of your to-do list. So you have to answer some client emails, and you have to do some editing, and you want to have a life outside of work, and you have to take your kid to practice, and you maybe want to have dinner with your spouse or partner once in a while. Blogging just gets pushed to the bottom. But if you have systems in place, You can blog first. Oh, and that's the other thing. We pick social media. We're going to go post on social media before we post to our blog, because there's instant justification, to the point that there's actually brain studies on this. Posting to Facebook, and then we all sit and refresh.
Watch those likes come in, right?
Yeah, you post to Instagram and you're just waiting for the likes to come in.
Waiting for mom to see that I posted and hit that like button. Thanks, mom.
Right? Thanks, mom. Who's going to comment? We're waiting for it. On Facebook, as the conversation started, have people liked it on my Facebook business page, whatever. So there's a dopamine rush when somebody likes your stuff. That's why you sit there and keep looking. And blogging is a little bit more like you're in it for the long haul with blogging, because it isn't always so instant like that. However, if you write something on your blog first, you can keep that like your own library of information, and then you can reshare it over and over and over again on social media. And then you don't have to be stressed out all the time about what social media content you're going to come up with.
Well, you posted something yesterday on the Instagram takeover about, you kind of compared living in an apartment to living in a house, and the parallel that I took was that social media, Instagram for example, you live in an apartment. You're in there with a whole lot of other people. There's lots of other voices. You might have that annoying upstairs neighbor that posts 37 times a day, and you might be the quiet, shy one who likes to produce art in a dark room, and you put one post up every couple of weeks. But
right.
But the difference is that when you populate your blog, it's like you're investing in something that is entirely, completely yours. You don't share that space with anybody else. And I thought it was a beautiful metaphor or illustration. I've never heard it put that way before. And while I've not had a blog for 17 years, but I have had one for about 11, and since I've been shooting. And my default has been, well, people don't want to read what I have to say. They just want to look at pretty pictures. So I'll just throw pictures up. And I neglect to my SEO's sadness the notion of putting like words and written content on there. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, the other thing is how many people panicked when Instagram just had, and they've done this a couple of times recently, they've made more changes where Instagram keeps making changes and you have no control. And then all of a sudden you're in a panic because you invested all this time in Instagram, and now they're hiding your posts from people. Like, okay, now what?
Sure. Yeah.
But the other, several years ago, I went to hire a family photographer. We were going to Kentucky. I wanted to do a big family portrait shoot, or we were talking about it as a gift for my in-laws. And I was tasked, among this, and my husband and his brother, they were like, hey, can you look for a photographer? And Lexington, Kentucky is one of the few markets where I didn't know anyone. So I went out there like a regular client. Do you want to know what's really boring?
Go for it. What?
Looking through photos of people you don't know and having no idea what's happening in those photos.
Yeah, of course.
It is so boring. Or the second thing that I saw repeatedly was, this was my favorite, because I was looking at family photographers. So this is my favorite family ever. This is my favorite location. I love this day. It was so fantastic. And then there's 100 pictures to look through.
It's kind of the everything is awesome blog post.
Right. But what I realized is, we say this was one of my favorite sessions ever. But if you don't post every client and say that, what was interesting is I looked at that, I went, we probably won't be their favorite family. What if we're not their favorite family? What if they don't like our session enough to put it on their website?
Yeah, that's perspective for you, for sure.
Yeah, and it made me feel really weird. I was like, oh, okay. I need to make sure I post something from every client, because it really does make your clients feel special, to be acknowledged like that, to make your website. And so I know this is like the age-old debate among photographers about blogging is, well, should I post everything? Man, try to find at least a few photos from, I mean, everything you do should be representative of your work anyways. Find a few things to post. Or I went and did a commercial shoot for a friend. It's not something I normally do. And I told them up front, hey, I'm not blogging this because I don't want to do more commercial work. I'm just doing this for you as a favor because I like you. So don't expect to see it on the blog. And I was just upfront with them about it, and I've done that a few times, even with portrait sessions where I've said, I don't normally photograph small children. Not my thing. I did that a few times in 2007 and quickly ran away. That is not my, I want to photograph people that I can talk to and that will do what I tell them to do. Chasing toddlers, not my thing.
Yeah, I get, I really liked my babies, but I don't necessarily like babies.
So if I do it though, as a favor for a past client, I tell them up front, this isn't going to be on the blog. Don't expect it to be there. So back to those, hunting for the photographer. I narrowed it down to 3 that had good photos. Of course, none of them had prices on their website, so I couldn't use pricing to narrow them down. I had to email all of them. But the other thing was nobody had anything personal on their website. So if just one of them had said, here's Christmas presents that I crocheted.
Sure.
I'm crafty, and they crocheted Christmas presents. So yes, that one person is my person.
Or imagine it, if they had posted photos of themselves next to their giant jacked up truck with their wraparound sunglasses and their flat brimmed hat, you might have gone, okay, that might not be the same.
Which is, and I'm glad that you said that, because polarizing like that is an awesome thing to do. Give people an out. If they're not going to like you and you're not going to like them, do you really want to spend time working with them?
To be clear, I have nothing against the guy with the jacked up truck and flat brimmed hat.
But the guy
knowing your aesthetic and your Mini Cooper,
I drive a Mini Cooper, and the guy with the jacked up truck that was maybe holding a dead deer and is telling me how we're going to go on a 5-mile hike for a portrait session. I'm all in on the 5-mile hike, and I'm actually cool with hunting. But it wasn't what I wanted the experience to be for my portrait session.
Sure.
It would have polarized me out.
Yeah, no, I get that. I like what you said about give people an out. Yep.
Yeah.
So okay, then let's get down to maybe some technical elements or some best practices. Do you, when you were kind of training yourself to be consistent in the sharing of your story and in blogging every shoot sort of thing, it's all well and good when there's a ton of stuff to blog, or when your days are structured so that you've got sorting and post-processing in the morning, have lunch, write a blog, publish and finish up emails before the end of the day. But we've all been in those seasons where it's been 3 weeks straight of post-processing and trying to get stuff out the door, and it's oh my gosh, I haven't blogged in a month. Do you have any suggestions or any tools or any kind of reminders that you set for yourself to help keep it a consistent flow of information?
I find ideally try to post once a week. And what you described is actually the ideal to me. You have a specific day of the week, that's when you write a post, or you sit down and write 3 or 4. If you're struggling for what to write, a lot of people write about their client's story, especially when it comes to weddings. It's a little bit easier to do with weddings. With portrait sessions, it's a little bit easier to talk about your experience as the photographer.
Sure.
So this is what I saw. The best thing to do is as you're culling your photos, select a small handful that excite you, that you want to say something about. And that thing that you want to say about it, unless all of your ideal clients are photographers, that thing that you want to say about it should not be about your amazing off-camera lighting technique that you use to take the picture. Because, like I said, I've over the years, I've actually ended up with a lot of photo enthusiasts as clients. So that might be really interesting to them. You know, they may want to know the technique, but on the average, your clients don't care how a photo was taken. It's not their thing. So there are definitely some people out there that do this really well, but sometimes they only share one photo and they write 2 or 3 short paragraphs about, oh, when the father of the bride first saw the bride. That's personally, I mean, that's my favorite moment of a wedding day, is when the father of the bride first sees the bride. I always try to get the look on dad's face when that happens. I have goosebumps right now just thinking about that moment on a wedding day. It makes you want to cry. So saying something about that, like it was so emotional, and this is, you know, what they've been through and why this was such a big moment. You know, it doesn't have to be a long post. And one other best practice I have, SEO is super, super important for your website. I am not denying that. There are great SEO experts out there that will teach you a lot about SEO, but people often say to me, they're like, well, how come you don't talk about SEO very often? And the reason for that is if you're so hung up on making sure that your blog posts are golden in the SEO area, that you're not even writing posts because you're worried about doing it wrong, that's hurting your SEO even more. Some content is better than no content.
That makes a lot of sense.
So like, lighten up on stressing about the SEO and just get some content written. You can go back later and worry about the SEO then. And also talking about, and this is great for wedding photographers, we have so many venues to talk about. One of my highest trafficked posts over the years was during the off season, and I wrote a post about one of the churches in town that I really like. I just talked about the church, and I shared like 4 or 5 pictures. I was like, this is a beautiful church to photograph in. I really love this church. Well, when people search for, it's Holy Rosary. So when people search for Holy Rosary Houston, my post comes up right at the top.
Sure, with your words, your impression of the place, and also your beautiful
and my photos. Yeah. And so now when somebody's searching for Holy Rosary Catholic Church photography, there I am.
Bada bing. Yeah. Okay.
You know.
Yeah, that's.
So think about the long tail. We tend to go and look at Google, and we're like, hey, where do I rank on Google? And you're looking for, ChristineTremoulet.com and where that ranks. But it's not, Google ranks individual pages, not the site as a whole. So worry about where your individual posts rank. And sometimes you're going to get the best quality traffic for the name of a venue, the name of a location, the name of a park that you photograph in a lot, so think about those things and talk about those places.
Sure. I love the notion of the post that you put about Holy Rosary. It was because you genuinely liked the church and wanted something to blog about. It strikes me there's a bit of an ebb and flow when it comes to whether it's inspiration or passion or workload or whatever. And of course there are the horror stories of I had to post 4 times a week and I just ran out of things to talk about, so I just borrowed things from another website. And when those things go south, people get into a big steaming pile, as it were, and it just never works out well for anybody. But I like your notion of I would imagine too that if you shoot at Holy Rosary in July, well, you may not want to blog about it in July because you've got a lot of other stuff coming out of your summer blogging schedule. But you can set yourself a reminder for November the 1st or whenever things start to slow down, and say, hey, don't put a post about Holy Rosary. Kind of make yourself notes throughout the year or throughout the month, throughout the week, and kind of plan that stuff way more in advance than you might be inclined to.
So speaking of planning in advance, I used to wonder why people always contact me. And speaking of boudoir, first of all, speaking of boudoir photography is actually really sensitive. So make sure your clients are okay before you post something. And I talked about, telling stories about your experience, etc. But don't ever share a client's personal story without getting their okay first. I just think that's sort of like a best practice. I even do that for weddings. I'll write a post and I'll send it to them and I'll say, here's what I'm going to post. I just want to make sure you're okay with this, and wait for them to send it back to me. So when it came to boudoir photography, the same with like doing Christmas sessions and stuff like this, people would always contact me like Thanksgiving weekend and say, I need photos right now for Christmas. And I was like, what? No, I can't do this. It finally occurred to me, like you said about planning, to sit down and look and to backwards plan. Okay, I want to be delivering this product by December 1st. That means I need to be done with the proofing sessions by November 15th, means I need to be done photographing by November 1st, means I need to start photographing all the way back in September, which means I need to start talking about Christmas related photo shoots in August.
I've been in Houston in August, and it feels nothing like Christmas.
And it feels nothing like Christmas. And the last thing I'm ever going to think of is the fact that I need to start promoting it that early. But that having an editorial / marketing calendar for yourself is going to help make blogging a lot easier, so that okay, this is what's coming up. I need to start talking about it at this point, because I don't want to talk about your Christmas session in August and it is 100 degrees, or if anybody's listening anywhere outside the United States, so it's about 37 degrees Celsius and it's miserable. Like, we're not thinking about Christmas. So, but I need to be. I mean, that's actually when I need, like, maybe even to do like an early bird special, like, hey, if you think you're going to want this as a Christmas gift, you need to come in now.
Yeah, I did that one year with albums. My clients who hadn't previously purchased an album with me, and I basically went from the album company's Christmas deadline, their cutoff, their holiday cutoff, and worked backwards on it's 4 weeks in production before they ship the album. So everything's got to be approved and sent in by this day. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't like I didn't have 30 albums to order that month, but we had a few come in and it was great. And folks were really glad that I had put that together in August or in September, whenever I got started with that, because we had time for them to sort through their revisions.
Give them time to look at their pictures and everything else. So think about a like Christmas in July type of sale. Like, it maybe sounds cheesy, but it's going to help make your business flow better. It's going to give you content that's a little bit quicker to write than writing a whole blog post about a session. It's going to give you content, but write the content no matter what it is and keep sharing it over and over. I think we get wrapped around the fact that, like, I wrote a blog post, I shared it on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and now it's done. No, there's a lot of studies out there that show, like, share it on Twitter. I think it's something crazy, like 27 times or something.
Okay.
Just to get the traffic, and you feel annoying. And you started this whole conversation with that. That's the dark horse, right? We are all taught as a society that it is rude to brag about yourself. We're all taught that. We're taught that you're not supposed to talk about yourself. That's boastful. All of those things. It's everything that we have to say about it. Look at that person bragging about themselves. Who do they think they are? Etc. That's the societal norm. However, if you worked for a company and your boss said, I'm not going to hand you a paycheck until you go tell 10 people about our company. You go tell 10 people about the company and I'll give you a paycheck. You'd walk out the door. You'd have no problem talking about the company because you want your paycheck. we're self-employed. That's how it works. Like your
For
business
sure.
is your boss, and your business demands that you talk about it. Otherwise, you're not getting a paycheck.
That's that's the perfect way I think to look at it. When you remove self from the mindset of it and just think
Right.
about the business being an entity, I think there's strength in that. So let me ask you. Oh,
the business
sorry.
entity has one goal and one goal only, and that is to make money. All your business cares about is making money. You care about a lot of other things. Your business wants to make money.
Interesting. Okay, well then I wonder if you've just answered my next question. I've got one more question before we open it up to listener Q&A, and that is, what are some common pitfalls you see business owners fall into, kind of as you look around our industry?
The biggest one is the am I allowed to use the long form word for BS on here? Is this family friendly?
Let's keep it family friendly.
Okay,
We'll call it bull snot.
So we're gonna call it the BS stories that you tell yourself, and that is, nobody cares. My life is boring. Nobody's gonna read it other than my mom. You know, I should just post it on Facebook because nobody's gonna see it otherwise. Like we really convince ourselves of these things. But Mirako said to me about 7 years ago something that I found so fascinating. She said, every time a client meets with you, they're hoping that you're the one. So most of us structure our conversations with our clients like we're trying to convince them that we're the one, but they're already hoping you're the one. Like they walk in the door and they want it to be you. They want to be done shopping.
Yeah, or else they wouldn't have taken the time out to walk through your door. They wouldn't have set aside the time to meet with you. That's beautiful.
They want it to be you. And like when she said that to me, it was one of those moments where like the earth kind of shifts. And I was like, oh my God. And instead, I think what a lot of us do through our websites, through our social media, through everything else is we think that we have to be this one image. We have to make everybody like us. We have to just be the perfect one, the perfect person. And we spend so much time wrapped up in that we make our lives miserable. And instead, if we would just be ourselves, I mean, they're already hoping that we're the one. We don't need to convince them that we're someone else. That and the other thing, huge one for me. The other people in your market are your peers. They're not really your competition. Before I lived in the Heights, I had a studio here, and there was somebody else who was looking for a studio space, and I was talking to him, and we were both wedding photographers, and I said, hey, I hear you're looking for a studio space. I'm looking for a studio mate. And he was like, what? We're competition. And I'm like, A, the obvious. You're male and I'm female. B, I'm like probably at least 10 years older than him. C, my target, my ideal client for my weddings was in their 30s and had a career, and his were coming straight out of college, and mom and dad were paying for their wedding, and my clients were paying for their own weddings. Like our clients were two really different people. And I was like, dude, like other than the fact that we're both wedding photographers, we're not competition. And he couldn't see that. So we never shared a studio. He said no. And I was like, oh, okay. But it was really interesting for me. Like, I think it's really important to like embrace the other people in your network, and because they can help you if you're ever in a crunch. I mean, I had a wedding a week ago and I needed a lens that wasn't available to rent. called one person and said, hey, can I borrow your lens for a day? And they were like, oh, of course. But if I had treated them over the years as a competitor, I couldn't have even called them and asked them for help. So embrace that local network, share referrals with them, talk them up on social media. Because if you're going to lose a client over the fact that, if I talked about you on social media and somebody was considering booking me and they turned around and booked you instead because they saw a photo on Instagram, I've got a bigger problem. I'm not networking right, or I'm not marketing right. I'm missing the boat on my own branding if I'm losing clients that easily.
I like that notion of collaboration and well, it's the whole notion of the rising tide, right? Like the rising tide lifts all boats. So we've got a couple of questions that have come in from outside listeners and observers, and I want to throw some of these at you real quick before we wrap this thing up. Carla writes, we photographers aren't always eloquent writers. Are there specific practices you'd recommend or resources to help with the writing portion?
So almost all of us are eloquent writers. Well, first of all, your blog posts don't have to be eloquent. Yes, they should be somewhat well written, but they don't have to be like the most amazing, epic, flowery story ever. Talk like you normally speak, because it's actually really confusing if the brand that you're presenting online looks one way and I meet you in person and you don't fit your brand. Like, that's really confusing to clients. That's one of those things that they'll have a mental disconnect and they won't book you because they're like, well, I thought she wrote this way. This is actually part of why if you hire, some people hire other people to write for them. Another thing I recommend, I think the block in WordPress is a little intimidating. So you feel like you have to be, you have to write a certain way. So open up Facebook and write it all out in Facebook and then copy and paste it into WordPress. It takes that edge off a little, helps you feel like you're just talking to your friends in Facebook, and it makes writing a lot easier. Consider finding somebody local, maybe somebody that's in college or something like that, somebody local to maybe look at your posts if you need somebody to help with editing, with double checking your spelling. Have somebody else look at, say, hey, can I pay you, X amount an hour? Would you just check over my post for me and make sure that there's no spelling errors?
It's funny you mentioned that because maybe this will tell you a little bit about my personality. I've definitely looked at people's blogs and thought, man, the photos are great. But if they don't know which version of the word there is the appropriate one, I'm not going to hire them, which,
right.
Maybe my own problem.
Right. And other, I always say, man, you don't need, this applies to the majority of us. This does not apply to somebody that's running a studio. I always have somebody like in the audience that goes, well, I have a studio and we photograph 20 people a day, and okay, totally different ball of wax. But for the majority of us, I only wanted to photograph 25 weddings a year. I didn't need 10,000 people to love me. I needed 25 couples to want to work with me. So I think that's also a little bit of a mindset shift, because we get really wrapped up in the numbers. I cannot tell you how many times people have said to me, I need 10,000 followers on Instagram. And I go, awesome. Why? And then I was like, how many portrait sessions do you do a year? And they go, oh, I do 100 a year. Okay. Why do you need 10,000 followers on Instagram?
It would take 100 years to photograph all of those followers at one time.
Right. And some of those followers may be all over the world and everything else. The majority of us service local markets, even in, because I really focused a lot on destination weddings, but even in my years where I had half of my weddings were destination weddings, they still almost always were clients tied back to my local market. So, focus on that local market, and you don't need 10,000 followers. You don't need 10,000 blog readers a month. You need 100 people to fall in love with you. 200 if we're going to assume that only half of them are going to actually book.
Okay, well that's good.
You know, so yeah, find somebody to proof your post. Write the post on Facebook if you need to, just to like get that edge off instead of doing it in WordPress. Phone a friend. Call. For some of us, I like to talk my posts out. So phone a friend and, you know, talk about your blog posts and take notes. And last but not least, try handwriting it. Handwriting actually activates different parts of your brain than typing. And for some people, handwriting it long form, or at least the original outline, helps them get it going. So.
Okay, cool. One last question. And I broke in on your Instagram takeover yesterday because no joke, like no fewer than 8 people texted me in the last 48 hours with something to the effect of, "Did she really name WordPress?" And so I think it's one of those it's one of those claims, Christine. I mean, because I heard this stat, and you probably know it more accurately than I do, but I heard this stat lately that some crazy number like 92% of all the websites on the internet.
It's 27%.
No, it wasn't much higher than that. I thought it was much higher than that.
27% is pretty huge.
Okay, then I embellished it. Okay, but like, yeah, millions and millions and millions of websites are WordPress. So like that's kind of like saying, oh yeah, you've seen Mount Rushmore. That's cool. That was like summer of 2003 for me. You know, I mean, that's a pretty monumental thing. So would you tell us the story of WordPress? Were you working with those guys at the time?
Nope, not at all. So I, like I said, I blogged for 17 years, and we used to have meetups in Houston of Houston bloggers. And 2002, right, a month after about a month after I met my husband, actually. So he wasn't my husband yet, obviously. I met this kid, Matt Mullenweg. Matt Mullenweg at the time was 18 or 19 years old. Might have still been a senior in high school when I first met him. And he told me how, probably about 6 months after I met him, he told me how he's working on this blogging software. And it was going to be amazing. It was going to change the world. And I was like, oh, I'm 14 years older than Matt. So I was like, oh, that's cute. Whatever.
little head pat.
Oh, that's cute. Joke's on me. As we just said, it's 27% of the internet is powered by it. So yeah, he was right and I was wrong about changing the world. And the other thing I asked him about at the time was, because he's like, yeah, it's gonna be free. And I went, how are you gonna survive? Again, 14 years older. Like, how are you gonna survive giving away free software? He's like, I don't know. And it really, like, it didn't matter to him. What mattered to him was democratizing the internet and creating the software. So I told him, I had one of my clients over the years on the website of things, I used to name products for her all the time. A good friend of mine, Anne Marie. And I used to name fragrance oils for her business. And I said, I'm good at naming things. So when you're ready, just let me know. If you need help with the name, let me know. I'm good at naming things. And as you know, the story about me, the story you told about me earlier, I mean, that's pretty typical of me to be like, hey, I can help you out. Let me help you out. So I was like, I'm good at naming things. Let me know. And South by Southwest, spring of 2003, he was like, okay, I'm ready to launch, but I have a name. And I was like, all right, well, give me a few days. And I called him, left a voicemail, possibly screaming, saying, I was like, WordPress, you have to name it WordPress. WordPress.org is available. Let me know if you need me to register it. And this is 2003. We didn't have smartphones yet. So he couldn't just like pull out his iPhone and register it. So I called him a little bit later. It used to be a big problem where if you search for a domain name, somebody else would pick it up and register it. So I called him a little bit later and I was like, hey, do you need me to register it? And he's like, no, I'm at a coffee shop right now. I'm registering it right now. And so no, I didn't work for them. like WordPress was a company of Matt and a few other programmers around the world building this thing that was going to be free. So I didn't charge him anything for it. He didn't pay me anything for it. I get the honor of somebody put me in Wikipedia. And I used to actually be listed on the homepage of the WordPress site.
That's incredible.
That little random trivia, in case anybody out there uses WordPress and you've ever wondered why you had to go to WordPress.com, WordPress.org to download it, that's why. WordPress.com wasn't available. There was nothing on the site. So there wasn't going to be I actually worked at a law firm at the time, so there wasn't going to be a trademark issue. It just wasn't available. It was somebody else owned that domain. So he got WordPress.org, and he was like, well, that's better because I want it to be open source. And this open source concept of the software is free forever, and any improvement to the software is always going to be free was really important to him, and it still is. And I think that open source attitude is what I then brought into my photography business and everything else that I've always done. Like, knowledge is free. Now, if you want my time, that's different. But
for sure.
But I'm always happy to share like things like this with what I know. So I did tell Matt that he owes me a steak dinner. And I saw him a couple years ago, and I was like, hey, by the way, you owe me a steak dinner. And he was like, yeah, haha, I probably do. And I was like, yeah, in Paris.
Nice.
So I'm still waiting. I haven't got my steak dinner in Paris. That will be my payment someday for naming WordPress. And a lot of people assume that I worked for the company at the time. There was no company. I didn't work for anybody. And I normally share that, though, just to help give people a sense of, like, I've been doing this blogging thing for a really long time.
Sure.
And I get it. The thing that I'm most passionate about is really helping people overcome those like mental hangups that are holding them back from doing it.
Well, I'm fascinated by that story. I've heard bits of it before, but not quite that thorough a telling of it. And that's amazing. You and I could probably go on for hours and hours more, but we're nearing the end of this broadcast. So I wanted to do a bit of a kind of a giveaway of sorts. We've got a discount code set up for all Stomp software products that we're going to be posting onto our Instagram feed in just a few minutes. That's at Stomp Software.
My love for Blog Stomp. Because using it, I tell everybody I can about it. I mean, software as a whole, all the products are great. My reason for loving Blog Stomp is getting those pictures together and reducing the headache of people that are just scrolling along, and it makes your pages load faster and everything else. Go use Blog Stomp.
Cool. I'm grateful for that. I appreciate that. Our goal was to make easy the process of blogging so that people were less scared of it. And that's kind of our favorite testimonials of like, man, I used to never blog. I hated it. The process is now it's super fast. That said, there will be a discount code only available on our Instagram feed in about 5 minutes time. And it's a kind of a flash sale. It's good for the next about 30 hours. So midnight tomorrow is when that expires. So look for that there. And did you have something you wanted to say there as well, Christine?
I did. What did we decide? Like, if they leave a comment?
I think that'd probably be the most equitable way to do it.
So I wrote a book. Oh, let me get it in the camera. So it's all about blogging for your business. 30 days to dominate your market, because there's 30 chapters of things that you can do once a day to help improve your blog. And so we were going to give away some copies of the book. So leave a comment on the post, and we will do some random draws and give people signed books.
Sounds good. And those will be announced on our Instagram. You announce that Friday morning. Is that all right? We'll give folks the whole day tomorrow to find that and comment, and then we'll do the drawing on Friday morning, and we'll announce that also on Instagram. Awesome. Well, Christine, as always, it's a pleasure to talk to you. You are a source of energy and fun and excitement for me. And golly, if that's all that you were, it'd be worth hanging out. But I learn something every time I'm around you, and today was no different. So thank you for sharing your experience and your expertise and your wisdom. Man, whenever you do take advantage of that steak dinner in Paris, make sure to post that on all of your social media so we can be envious of you.
And I will blog about it.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, with that, we say goodbye. So I'm Chip, and it's been great talking with you.
It has been great talking with you too. Thanks for
right.
having me.
Talk to you next time.
Bye.